We strive for this to be a safe space, so we definitely want people to feel comfortable sharing their story and their experiences. And so we want to welcome everyone's broad thoughts and perspectives, and so we do ask that we strive to be respectful of others. We also acknowledge that people might be in different places in their understanding of digital mental health, and so we welcome any questions that folks might have about the space. All right, so I know I said that was the last note, but this is actually technically the last note, I guess. I always mention this in all of our drop-ins, but there is no one-size-fits-all solution here, right? And I think this is something that's really important to take note of, even in mental health in general. There are a lot of digital tools out there for mental health. There are a lot of different things that work for different people in the mental health space. And it's important to remember that it's at the end of the day, it's up to the end user or the client to determine what their needs and preferences are. So just something to keep note of as we talk about today, especially today, which we'll be talking about digital tools for managing stress. And I know this is a super broad area. And so I think it's important to maybe establish a little bit about what we'll be talking about when we talk about stress. All right, so let's start by talking about stress. The definition that I'll be using for stress here is stress is a normal reaction the body has when changes occur, resulting in physical, emotional, and intellectual responses. And so I think kind of starting with this definition, hopefully can help us kind of have like a central thing to refer to. And I know stress, most, if not all of us have experienced it, right? At least one point in our lives, and to varying degrees. Stress can differ from person to person, right? Both in what causes stress and how it presents. So someone might be stressed again about food insecurity or being unable to figure out what's next for housing, or perhaps maybe facing experiences with racism. Those things can definitely stress you out. Another person might be stressed about driving, or maybe something about work, maybe having a due date, right? So those things can vary from person to person, both in what affects that person and what stresses them out. Again, we started to talk about this. Stress is natural, in that as humans, we've evolved to experience stress in one way or another. And we often hear this thing called the fight or flight response. And stress can oftentimes help us do things like get away from a predator, like a wolf or something in the woods, right? Or a bear. But we've evolved now to this point as a society where perhaps these different stressors, which are not natural, stress nowadays has evolved to this level where there are these things that weigh on us that can cause or result in chronic stress, right? And then just wanted to note a few things here. So these are a few of the terms you might have heard kind of lumped in or used in similar or similar ways. So stress and worry, which I think on the might be on a similar plane, right? Anxiety and anxiety disorder, those things being a little bit more on the clinical side. So I definitely want to focus a lot more on the stress and worry side of things. Actually, I'll go ahead and share this video because I think that there are a few things in here that might jog people's memory and help us in our conversation later.
Want to zap the stress and introduce a little more zen into your life? Follow these 7 steps for a more peaceful path. 1. Eat a healthy diet. Forget the ice cream binge and load up on fresh fruits and veggies and lean proteins. Your body will thank you with a happier outlook. 2. Get enough sleep. You'll be better able to handle stress that comes your way. Didn't catch enough Z's last night? Grab a nap for a mood boost. 3. Get moving. Take a stroll around the block, walk the dog, or bike to the grocery store. Find an exercise buddy. It's always more fun to exercise with a friend. Exercise releases feel-good chemicals that will lift your spirits. 4. Try some tunes. Soothing music can lower blood pressure, heart rate, and anxiety. Upbeat tunes can help you blow off steam. 5. Come up with a stress relief toolkit. Meditate. Take a long walk. Watch a comedy. Curl up with a good book or light some candles. Find what soothes you. 6. Enjoy nature. Work in your garden, walk in the woods, or relax in the park. A change of scenery can brighten your mood. 7. Get social. Have lunch with a coworker, phone a friend, volunteer, take a class. Being around other people will give you a fresh perspective and help you find your happy place. It's all about what works for you. So start letting go of the stress in your life and move to your place of peace.
All right. So I know that video is a little on the side of like, just do the things that you enjoy and things like that, but that's not always that quite easy to do. But I know we didn't really list things like socializing in here, but that can definitely be something that can help de-stress. I know I was reading something the other day about how sort of volunteer work can be de-stressing. It can actually be one of the best ways to bring positive emotions about us, right? Like, and so just being able to help others, that can oftentimes be a way of de-stressing and socializing at the same time. All right, so this brings us to sort of this next piece that I want to cover today, which is, again, there are so many tools out there for managing stress. As someone who reviews apps and has managed groups of people reviewing apps, like there are tons of tools that aim to help you de-stress or manage your stress. And it's great because these tools all take different approaches. As we talked about earlier, there's a lot of, there's no one size fits all solution, right? And there are so many different causes of stress, so many different things that work for folks to help manage their stress. But ironically, finding these tools can also be stressful, right? Because there's so many of them. I think literally thousands in the anti-stress area. So instead of recommending specific products, I wanted to start by sort of looking more at the skill of finding these apps, right? Both for ourselves and for maybe people that we're helping if we work with folks in this area. And I'll be happy to talk about or recommend some later. But for now, again, want to look more into this process or set of skills that we might be able to use in determining what apps might be useful. So we'll start by using a framework that we've presented on before. This was created by our PsyberGuide alum, Martha Neary. It's this sort of framework for recommending apps. In this context, it was for apps for youth, but I think this framework can be useful for as a starting point for folks across all ages. So the first step is narrowing things down. So defining the concern, specifying the end user, identifying contender apps. The only thing I would add here is maybe if you're not as familiar with the app space, looking at features that you think might be useful for the end user that you've identified. Exploring. So then looking into those different tools or perhaps features that you looked at and identifying if these features and tools have sort of credibility? Basically, do they work for people who are experiencing those challenges? Um, is the tool respectful of person's privacy? And then also the user experience. Is it going to be easy or usable for the person? And then contextualizing. So again, looking at some other layer of factors that can come into play here. So things like logistical factors, things like inclusivity and design, patient, family factors, provider, healthcare system factors, things of that sort. And then you want to be able to recommend those apps and then reevaluate, and then probably go through that cycle again. And the goal here again is to narrow down eventually and create essentially like a toolkit, like a set of tools, because oftentimes it's hard to find just one tool that works, at least in the very beginning. So you want to be able to find like a set of tools or a toolkit that folks can access. All right, so starting off with this framework and applying this to our situation here, and from here, I'll actually use myself as an example. So I'll just copy this over. So about the person, usually want to be able to understand who they are, how the stress presents within that person, how the person might identify themselves. These are important things to start to consider. And then also understanding the situation and what they're experiencing. So maybe identifying the sources of stress, identifying other primary concerns, and then starting to list out the tools and features. So about the person, so for me, I think some of the core things that I would note about myself is I love technology, obviously. I have an understanding of the mental health field. What else can I say? Identify as gender male. Let me see. Let's skip over to what I might be experiencing. Stress around, let's just say life changes. And then I'll say work, school, family. And then revisiting this part. So a little bit about myself again, identify as cisgender male. Let's see. I think it's important to identify my age. So mid-30s, without being too specific there. Oh, and again, these are things that might seem mundane, right? So, I use an iPhone, like, who cares, right? But that's really important because oftentimes, what kind of device or thing you use, like that could really determine my level of access to certain apps or technologies. If I don't have access to internet, right, or regular access to internet, that can oftentimes result in me being challenged in accessing these digital tools. And I'll just throw this as an example here, since this is something I wanted to touch on. Cool. So I have sort of, again, this isn't definitely not a complete picture, but I'm starting to develop this picture of who this person is, right? person who loves technology. So you can assume that the person has a good sort of digital literacy level. There's an understanding of the mental health field. So you don't have to necessarily go super basic with content around mental health. Identify as cisgender male in the mid 30s. So this can maybe start to sort of inform the different features that you might be looking for in an app. Things like again, consistent access to internet, use of an iPhone, things like that. These are things that you are considering about the person. What they're experiencing. So stress around life changes, work, school, family, and organizational challenges. So things like these could be executive functioning, right? These can definitely be things that can present as a challenge. So now you can start to identify or start to think about some potential tools, potential features that you're looking for. If I'm experiencing also, I'll just add this here, acute stressors around due dates for school. We'll add that in there. So perhaps one of the tools or features that I might be looking for is a mindfulness app or feature. Maybe I'll be looking at CBT for thought challenging. A calendar to help with some of the more organizational challenges or the executive functioning challenges. To-do list, right? So now I'm sort of listing out these features in a broad scale, and we're sort of using this funnel down approach where we can start to funnel down maybe some apps or things that might help meet these needs. Now, this is where, again, you might not need to go into, or you might not have the full knowledge of what tools are out there as far as like products, specific products. So maybe you are literally just accessing things or referring the client to using things on their phone, right? So maybe the Reminders app, which is a built-in app on the iPhone, maybe Outlook or Calendar app on the iPhone, right? These are things that are already present or easily available, not necessarily targeted towards mental health, right? But these are things that can be helpful in addressing some of the challenges that might be coming up. So those acute stressors around due dates for school, maybe it'll be helpful for the person to take out their calendar and calendar all of their upcoming due dates, just so that way they are aware of it and they're not, those dates aren't sneaking up on them, right? CBT for thought challenging. I'll just throw out Wobot. And again, if you don't have super extensive knowledge of the app space, that's perfectly okay. What you can do then is, once you've listed out the features, you can maybe do a quick Google search. You can maybe access One Mind PsyberGuide or any other of these app review databases. I know there's Orca in the UK. There's also Mind Apps, which is based in Harvard Beth Israel. That can definitely be those useful resources. You can also consult with others and do some research that way as well. Mindfulness app, I'll just go with Headspace. That's an easy one that a lot of folks know about. So maybe I'll want to list out 2 or 3 different ones. Headspace, Calm, and Insight Timer, I think, was one that has come up recently. Wobot, Happify, Mood Notes. So in this case, obviously, I have the luxury of having a more in-depth knowledge of what's out there. But if you don't, it's okay. And again, there are other ways to get those recommendations for apps based on those features. And so you're going to want to start to explore. Part of that will be doing a search, asking around different experts, checking out a database like CyberGuide or Mind Apps. And then you're going to want to dive into the tools once you've started to understand them a little bit and narrow those down. So are these tools credible? Meaning, do they actually help with what they're purporting to help with? So if it's stress, do these tools actually help with reducing stress? If it's an aspect of things that can cause stress, so if it's things like, again, organizational skills or calendaring, does having a calendar app actually help with organization, right? Like, so making sure to do a little bit of that dive. Do the tools respect the end user? Do they respect their data? Things like that. Is it easy and cool to use? Again, going back to this identity right here, does this match up with something that you think I, as a person, would like, a person with that identity? And then how might the person use the tools? Will I be able to use it? Will I, again, if I don't have consistent access to internet, am I going to struggle to access some of these tools? And then finally, demo these tools for yourself, right? I think that's an important thing that oftentimes can be missed, making sure that you actually test it out yourself and see how it works, be familiar with it a bit. And whether or not that's for these tools are for you or for someone else that you're referring to. And then contextualize. So this is adding that other layer to help narrow things down even more. Understanding what is surrounding the person. We talked about systemic factors earlier, things like food insecurity, homelessness. If the person really values their identity in terms of things like race or gender, gender identity, then make sure that you have an app that respects that, right? And factoring things like accessibility and usability, inclusivity. If a person has a particular disability, making sure that the app can accommodate that. And then how will this work with other tools that the person might be using? That's an important question to ask as well. And making sure that the person can use it independently. And then one last check here before you do the referral or you really dive into using the app is understand yourself, right? I know this typically comes in the beginning, but I like to kind of throw it in throughout and sprinkle it in throughout, but especially here in the contextualized section. Understand how you relate to technology. If you're someone who doesn't like technology to begin with, then it might not be a good fit, right, to use a digital tool. If you're someone who might be curious about technology, maybe you seek out a few classes first to improve digital literacy skills to gain that better relationship with technology. So again, understand yourself here at this point before you use the app if it's for you, or before you refer the app if it's for someone else. And yeah, again, something to keep in mind is that these apps and tools that you refer people to, digital apps and tools, they don't have to be fancy products or really specifically targeted products. They could be just apps that are already built into your phone or maybe built into your device. So just something to consider based on the sort of causes of stress that we've identified here, right? And then you recommend the apps, and then you go through this reevaluation if the apps have worked or if they haven't. Usually I like to say whenever I referred clients to apps that it's going to be an experiment. We'll try it out once I've created this toolkit. toolkit of apps, I might take that toolkit and then present it to them and say we'll reevaluate in like maybe 2 weeks or so, right? That should give them enough time to use it. And going back to here, for example, the toolkit again is important because you want to give options. You don't want to pigeonhole into just like one thing. You want to give yourself options. You want to give others options, but not too many, right? And I know we went kind of quickly there in the last few seconds, but I always love teaching people the skill of finding apps. So feel free to reach out anytime. Yeah, my email there. I'll also note you can always find our website where we have these tools listed, and then we have some of these metrics already ready to go for you to read through. I mentioned earlier also Mind Apps. Let me see if I could pull that up real quick. Mindapps.org, another great resource here. And really quickly, some tools that probably I would use personally: Headspace, meditation, Happify for CBT, getting that CBT aspect and sort of training. And then WISA, which is I love concepts of chatbots, and sort of like the techie side of me always has been fascinated with how they work. So this is a CBT based chatbot. And some additional resources. So I have a few videos here. Definitely not going to play them now, but I recommend folks check them out. I love these videos just to sort of understand more about stress, particularly that first one, emotion, stress, and health, and how they can kind of mix in together. The other two, again, might feel a little more negative, but I will say they do give like a good bit of information about how stress works and how it can really affect you. So that should be all. Again, if folks have any questions at all about the process that we use in terms of identifying apps and being able to recommend them, please don't feel afraid to reach out. You have my email. And again, sorry for taking up a little bit of time over that 2 p.m. mark, but I really appreciate everyone joining today and for everyone's participation. And hope to see folks at the next one.